Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm joined here this morning by Brad and Megan Hulett, the parents of Bradley Hulett, and their attorney, Anthony Rickman. We're here today to share the details of a resolution that our office has reached in the case against Christopher Ramsey Bevan. As you know, Bevan is charged with a manslaughter in the death of Bradley Hulett. Both boys were 15 when Bradley was shot and killed on December 13th, 2019. With the hope of establishing a framework for resolving this case, last month our office arranged a meeting between Bevan and the Huletts. The Hulett family told us they wanted two things from this process. They wanted to know exactly what happened leading up to Bradley's death, and they wanted Bevan to help them raise awareness with kids about gun safety. So we sat down together, Bevan, the Huletts, and attorneys from my office, in person for an honest and difficult conversation. It was emotional and it was truthful. And at the end, Bevan and the Huletts stood up, hugged one another, and agreed to work together to help others raise awareness about gun safety. The meeting was the first step in an agreement that we've now reached with Bevan. The agreement respects the wishes of the Hulett family to reconcile with their son's friend, whom they had known for years before this tragedy, while still holding Bevan accountable for his role in Bradley's death. Bradley Hulett's death was tragic and preventable, and the Hulett family wants to make sure that some positive change comes from his loss, especially when it comes to gun safety awareness. In addition to taking part in that meeting and speaking truthfully about what happened that afternoon, December of 2019, Bevan must now complete an extensive pretrial intervention program under the supervision of the Department of Corrections. This pretrial intervention, or PTI program, includes mental health treatment, drug and alcohol evaluation, 150 hours of community service, maintaining full-time school or employment, not possessing a weapon, drugs, or alcohol, and most importantly, remaining arrest-free. PTI is commonly used across the state for defendants with minimal or zero criminal history. Typically, the supervision lasts 18 months. Bevan will be under supervision for 3 years, although he will be eligible for early termination after 18 months if he completes all the sanctions. If Bevan successfully completes all the requirements, every mandatory step, the charges will ultimately be dismissed, just as they would be for any defendant who completes PTI. Ramsey Bevan has agreed to perform his community service, working side by side with the Hulett family. He'll be volunteering with a foundation that the Huletts created in Bradley's honor to educate kids about gun safety. Bevan was one of Bradley's best friends. Bradley's parents told us they were less concerned about sending him to prison and more concerned about repairing the bond they once had with their son's friend. And they hope Ramsey would be able to rebuild his life going forward too. This resolution makes those things possible. I can't compliment Mr. and Mrs. Hulett enough for their trust and patience as this case went forward, as we prepared for trial, and as we ultimately brought this case to an appropriate and acceptable resolution. I'm going to ask them to come forward now. Megan Hulett has a statement she's prepared to read.
On behalf of myself, Brad, and the rest of our family, we would like to thank the following for helping us facilitate this agreed upon outcome. Andrew Warren and everybody at the state's attorney's office, Anthony Rickman and the Rickman Law Firm. Our attorney Anthony has been with us every step of the way in this horrible journey. He has been with us from day one, and we wouldn't have made it here without him. If you are ever in need of an attorney, make sure to find one with similar morals and values as yours. We also need to take a moment to thank all of our friends and family for supporting us. Everyone has opinions on what should or should not have happened, but we are extremely fortunate to have a great support system. They have stood by our side throughout. We have also like to thank everybody on the Justice for Bradley page, Chad Cronister and the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, especially Officer Johnson, who transported my husband to the hospital the night of Bradley's death, Drew Garabo, John Senning, Micah Rotunda, and Joey Flash on the Bone 102.5, they provided us a platform to ultimately find the truth and begin to heal. We are forever in their debt, and our family stands with Drew as he battles with cancer. We'd like to thank Toby Porter and all of the Hillsborough County Fire and Rescue, the doctors and nurses at Brandon Regional Hospital, Zipperer's Funeral Home for all the funeral arrangements, Fishhawk Fellowship Church for opening their doors for everyone to say goodbye to our son, all of the media, but especially Gloria Gomez, Justin Shecker, Catherine Smith, Roger Johnson, and Tony Marrero, who has followed our journey throughout the whole thing. There were a lot of organizations that helped us raise money for the foundation. Newsom High School Basketball Boosters, Durant High School Basketball, Just One Outreach, and Operation Lotus. Specifically, Melanie Jordy, she has helped us and been an absolute inspiration and shown us how to use compassion throughout our grief. We left the biggest thank you for last. The third boy that was present the night of Bradley's death at the Prez's house is nothing short of a hero in our eyes. With the support of his family, which plays an enormous role in the shortcomings of the others, he did the right thing from day one. He fully cooperated with the police. Hopefully, he can live a wonderful life with a special angel by his side, knowing that he was there for Bradley when Bradley needed him most. It is never wrong to do the right thing. We feel that this was the best possible outcome given the circumstances of Bradley's case. We never wanted to see Ramsey spend a lengthy amount of time in jail. All we ever wanted from the beginning was for all who were involved to take responsibility for their part in the death of our son. A few apologies would have went a long way. In addition to Sig Sauer, who manufactured a defective weapon, in our opinion, there were 3 people whose actions led to Bradley's death. Officer Perez for not properly storing his gun, his son for entering the bedroom that was off limits, retrieving the gun and suggesting to use it to scare Bradley, and Ramsey, who was holding the faulty weapon when it was discharged, resulting in a TPD issued bullet being shot into the back of our son's skull. While we understand the above mentioned actions are not quote unquote illegal by the laws as written today, our opinion is that there is a moral obligation as well as a legal one. We would like to thank Chief Dugan for changing the policy implemented by TPD. If this situation would ever occur again, the officer would face termination. It was very hard for us to think of living the rest of our lives preaching kindness matters and then not practicing that given the opportunity. Ramsey has agreed to help us keep Bradley's memory alive through the foundation. He is also willing to spread awareness about gun safety in Bradley's honor. How can we choose to push for Ramsey to serve time in jail when that will not benefit others? His life can help save others. How can we be okay with a 15-year-old taking full responsibility for Bradley's death when he held the gun for 3 to 5 seconds? We cannot. That would not be justice. We would like to say that we wish we could have come to this conclusion a long time ago. If everybody would have stepped up and cooperated with the police by giving truthful testimony from the beginning, we would be a lot further along in our journey. But we can't go back to change the past, so today starts our new beginning. We hope that everyone remembers Bradley for the happy, smiling, and beautiful brother and friend and son that he was. If you have a gun, store it safely. If you see a gun, do not touch it and leave immediately. And if you have the opportunity to choose Choose kindness. Long love, Bradley.
I want to thank Brad and Megan again for their strength through all of this. No parent should ever have to bury a child, and no words, no process, no outcome can bring back what they've lost. Working with the Huletts, we pursued a resolution using a well-known process called restorative justice. Restorative justice seeks closure for victims through reconciliation and a defendant's acceptance of responsibility. Restorative justice views crime not only as breaking a written law, but through the harm that it causes to victims and the community. A restorative justice approach seeks to repair those harms and rebuild trust rather than relying only on punishment. Our office has elected to use this process in the past in cases involving first-time offenders when the victim or victim's family has advocated for restorative justice rather than traditional prosecution and punishment. Our office filed the manslaughter charge under the theory that Ramsey Bevan had intentionally or recklessly pulled the gun's trigger, even though he was not intending to harm anyone. During the course of our investigation, however, we learned that this particular handgun has a defect, a design defect. The gun involved is a Sig Sauer P320. It has a defect that allows the gun to fire without the trigger being pulled. This has been seen in examples from across the country and from right here in Tampa. This new information, along with the wishes of the Hulett family, prompted our office to consider this resolution. Before I open it up to questions, please keep in mind that until Bevan completes the sanctions imposed, this is still a pending case, and therefore I'm limited in the amount of factual information that I can provide. Also, Attorney Anthony Rickman is here to answer questions on behalf of the Huletts.
Is he being sentenced as charged?
He's entering a pretrial intervention program. So, as I described before, the program contemplates he completes sanctions, and if he completes those sanctions without violating the agreement, at the end of the 18 or 36 months, the charges will be dismissed.
So it's still a manslaughter charge hanging over. You didn't downgrade the charge.
That's correct. The charge right now continues.
I know Mr. Rickman is here to answer questions, but I would like to ask you is how this event, this tragedy, changed the lives of the young men who were there?
Look, I can answer some of that. I mean, look, this tragic event obviously changed everybody's life. You know, we know that the one witness who came forward, he'll be forever affected by this. You know, we haven't had the opportunity to talk to, the Perez's and their family, but obviously it's affected them. We were able to meet with Ramsey Bevan himself. And, through the family, we could see how this affected him. And no matter what resolution we come to in this case, Ramsey is going to have to live with his actions and what happened that day. And everyone in that house, everyone who's involved in this case, the friends, the family, the community, is going to have to live with what happened and the consequences of what happened. And it's affected all of them. Speaking with his lawyer, particularly Ramsey's lawyer, he's explained how it's affected him. So we know it's affected all of them, but nothing could affect, nothing compared to the immeasurable loss that the Hulett family suffered. And to stand here today seeking justice, not vengeance, that's what this has been all about for them. It's about justice for Bradley, not vengeance. It's about doing what's just and what's right. And for them to be standing here today and hugging the person in a meeting a few weeks ago who held the firearm that killed their son, it speaks volumes for this type of family and the type of people that the Huletts are.
Do they accept
So what will Ramsey do then to going forward? What will he do specifically to educate others about this danger?
Well, when you look at what happened, in my opinion, there's three real issues here. The first issue, number one, is the safe storage of the firearm. And the first thing we want to do is make safe storage law something that prosecutors can use. Something that law enforcement can use to make sure that people who are not storing their guns safely are held responsible, but also to educate. So we want to involve Ramsey in the education of people about how to store a firearm. Number two, we wouldn't be here today if people didn't mishandle a firearm and treat that firearm as it should be treated, as a loaded weapon. What we want Bevin to do is to help educate the community so that this doesn't happen again, so other parents aren't standing up here and mourning the death of their child. So with the BH3 Foundation, one of the other things that we're going to do is have Ramsey talk about, gun safety. Go out and talk to high schools, talk to schools. The BH3 Foundation, is going to be involved in preaching gun safety and hopefully making a difference in the community so no one has to stand up here again. And then the third is obviously that firearm itself, and hopefully, holding gun manufacturers responsible, particularly Sig Sauer. If you're going to put a product out there, make sure that product is safe, make sure it's not defective, and make sure that innocent people aren't killed with your product.
Is there possible civil litigation against Sig Sauer?
I can't comment on this point in time, but we do believe, as through the discovery, that there is responsibility on the gun manufacturer for sure.
Does there,
So Sig Sauer allowed for agencies to refit their gun, to basically send it back and have it fixed in some way, and I'm not a gun expert. And TPD took advantage of that opportunity and actually had the guns that were issued through the department refitted with the intention of addressing that design defect. That being said, this gun was not refitted, and there's litigation pending across the country against Sig Sauer, some of which alleges that even after the refitting of the gun, it continues to fire without somebody pulling the trigger.
Was this a issued weapon involved? Is it his service?
This was not his service weapon. This was his
Personal.
Officer Perez's personal firearm.
Okay. Do you know if there are still Sig Sauers being used by TPD of this model?
Law enforcement agencies across the country continue to use the Sig Sauer P320.
You don't know if
TPD is still using it. But again, TPD had theirs refitted.
Andrew, can you describe, there are two cases today, this one and another case in the courthouse, where very high-profile defendants won't be going to prison for offenses that happen. Is that just the way things are going? I mean, you're working for resolution. I mean,
I'm not commenting on any case that's not in front of us right now or that hasn't happened yet. We're here to talk about what happened in this case regarding Ramsey Bevin.
I understand this trial was set to begin in February 2022. When does this retrial intervention program begin?
Well, it begins now. One of the terms of the agreement was for him to provide truthful testimony and to proffer what we call a factual proffer with us. He completed that early October. So as soon as the agreement gets filed officially, he will enter the pretrial intervention program, and then the clock starts on his 36 months. I believe he has a court date scheduled for December, but typically the court dates will be set aside, because if he complies with all the sanctions, then there's no need to have him in court anymore.
But you have to go in front of a judge to sign the PTI. Correct?
We actually can put somebody in a PTI. Prosecutors have broad latitude in terms of entering agreements with defendants, and that's what we did here. PTI program is something created by statute, so essentially we just put someone into the program, and then the case is taken off the active docket during the pendency of the PTI program.
Is he still in jail? He's still in jail?
He hasn't been in jail since he initially bonded out.
The family, being able to, that hug, what was that like? Was it,
I can answer.
go ahead.
Or do you want to?
That was huge input of our healing process. We have been stuck, I feel, in this, like, I'll call it purgatory, of it's been almost 2 years now without any type of resolution. And that was, I feel, the first step in us being able to move through this whole process. So it was huge. It was an emotional day for us. Emotional whole entire week, but it felt like it was the right thing to do. So it felt good to move forward in the healing process.
Can I ask for you personally, I can't imagine the pain and everything that you've been through. How did you find the strength to have that meeting, to forgive?
Pretty much Bradley. If you knew Bradley, he was very, very kind and very sweet, and he wouldn't have wanted any of this, obviously, but he would never have wanted us to be in turmoil and not speaking to his people that he was friends with and people that were at my house and spent the night at he would have hated all of this. So when it was brought up to us that we could go through this resolution instead of, we wouldn't have been happy at the end of the trial if Ramsey was sent to jail. That wouldn't have made us happy. We wanted consequences, but that wasn't one of them. So when this opportunity arose, it felt like it was the best thing for everybody.
Ms. Warren, can I ask, I'm curious how much importance the gun, that defect in the gun had in the decision to even put this on the table of pretrial intervention. If there was no defect, would that be the case?
I can't speculate about what may have happened if the facts were different. I can tell you that the design defect in the Sig Sauer was significant. It created an obstacle for us being able to prove that, as charged, Bevan had intentionally or recklessly fired the gun. It even raised questions about whether he in fact had intentionally or recklessly fired the gun, or whether the gun just happened to go off while it was in his hand during those very few seconds. So it was a significant factor, but it was a significant factor among other factors, and this process was largely driven from the beginning by what the Huletts wanted and the outcome that they hoped, and we're able to bring an outcome that I think is the best considering the circumstances.
For you as a prosecutor, how important was it in this process in accepting this to have him explain what happened leading up to the tragedy?
The significance of that was not so much for me as a prosecutor for the office, because that agreement was pending, was while we were contemplating this outcome. The significance behind it was when Brad and Megan had said that they want to hear from him. They want the opportunity to hear what happened from Bevan. That was the significance. To be able to sit in the room, watch him admit his responsibility in this, to describe what happened, and then ultimately to be able to stand up and through tears hug the parents of the best friend who he had shot. That was the significance.
So for any attorney representing that young man, it's difficult, I suppose, to advocate your Fifth Amendment rights. How did that come about that he was allowed to speak?
There's a lot of trust that goes on. This is why it takes time. Doing the right thing often takes time. And here we were able to have discussions between Bevan's counsel and with the family, with the Huletts and with Mr. Rickman about how to achieve the outcome that was the best. And we got to the point where Bevan was willing to come in and make a statement.
I suppose this is maybe more of just a philosophical question about your office and the way that these cases are prosecuted. But it's not like a civil suit. It's a state criminal case. I guess how much discretion is there for your office or for an attorney to decide that pretrial intervention is appropriate as opposed to just prosecuting to the fullest extent?
Being a good prosecutor is all about solving problems. We're constantly trying to balance public safety, accountability, rehabilitation, the wishes of victims and victims' family to achieve the right outcome. The old, outdated model of simply closing your eyes and prosecuting every case as if it were a law school exam doesn't make our neighborhood safer. It doesn't bring satisfaction and closure to the victim's family. It doesn't rehabilitate offenders. It doesn't reduce recidivism. What we should be doing as prosecutors is thinking holistically about how do we make our neighborhood safer? How do we prevent crime from occurring? How do we rehabilitate defendants? How do we stand up for victims? This is a unorthodox approach, but it's the one that our community deserves.
And it seems like the outcome was sort of where everyone sort of, but just the rest of life.
There's no win here.
Right. Right, but he was. But I understood what he meant.
Yeah, there is no win here. The win is to go back in time. But when we're looking at our choices between potentially locking up a now 17-year-old for a long time, which, as Megan said, doesn't bring Bradley back, doesn't reduce the likelihood that other parents have to stand here talking about how their child was lost. We are trying to solve problems, and the way we solved this problem was trying to hold Bevan accountable for his role in this and trying to find an outcome that brought closure to the family and that did some good going forward. And because of the compassion and patience of these two people right here, we were able to achieve that.
And just to clarify, you said the PTI program will last for 18 months. If he passes that, the charges will be dropped and then he will be monitored for 3 years.
The PTI program is set to last for 3 years with DOC supervision. The standard PTI program is 18 months. We doubled it in this case, but we're allowing early termination at that 18-month mark if he's complied with all the terms.
It'll be free and clear of supervision.
That's correct.
And there won't be any criminal records following?
He would have the arrest record against him and the fact that the charges were filed, but that the case was ultimately dismissed. Thank you very much.